I'll go ahead and start the YouTube highlight from right here, and we'll go ahead and get it kicking. Today is the weekly raid leader discussion. It's every Tuesday, starts at 5 p.m. Usually goes about an hour, plus or minus, depending on how many questions and how in depth we're getting and whatever the topic is for the week. 2 topics a week is what I like to keep it at. Maybe one, depending on the topic. So the two that I got down this week, just using my phone to jot down notes and things to go over in these. I wanted to go over multiple raids and the benefits of doing those, and also wanted to go over loot systems because that is a very common concern for a lot of people that are asking why we do this, how we do that, and blah blah blah. Okay, so we're going to start with the multiple raid benefits, and I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a link to follow, and you can go check this out. Alright, this is a link that is on our front page, and you guys can check this out. I'll go ahead and get it up on the main screen here. This is something that contained our spreadsheet for the first week of Dragon Souls. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with the LFR drama and all that jazz that was surrounding the tier as a whole, but we weren't involved with it. And one of the main reasons we weren't really involved with it at all is we didn't really find out about it until the Friday that it had happened, and that's when everything had already started going into place as far as stopping it and whatnot. The reason being is that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday we were busy doing 6 normal mode Dragon Souls, okay? And a lot of people thought that this spreadsheet was an LFR spreadsheet. That's not what it is at all. This is all normal modes. We had a few weeks prior to Dragon Souls release, so actually months prior, going into Firelands, we knew that alts were going to be important going into Dragon Soul, alright? And this gets into me talking about and telling people a lot of the times, is you can't, with today's rating and how it works, you can't really just have 25 to 30 people that play one character and expect to, finish at any type of a, decent standing. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying that you're just hurting your chances substantially. At the end of the day, it just comes down to who has the most organized, disciplined, and efficient raid group. Okay, but I'm not saying if you have all these alts, you're guaranteed to win. That's not the case at all. All you're doing is, increasing your ability to raid stack, adjust your comp to whatever is needed, and at the end of the day, it does play a huge part in getting the ranking that you're going for. All right, so this is a screen capture that we took from our spreadsheet the week 1 of going into Dragon Soul. But yeah, going back to what I was saying is, we knew they were going to be important going into the next tier of content. We didn't really have them as geared as we wanted to going into Firelands, and that was due to a lot of reasons, mainly just if you guys are familiar with the guild at all, you know that there was a lot of restructure with the leadership that was done between tier 11 and tier 12, and and so we didn't really have that heavy alt base going into Firelands. We still did 3 groups, but it wasn't nearly as full swing as it was going into tier Dragon Soul and how it is now. Each tier we're getting better and better with how we're managing alts, expectations, and things like that. But yeah, say about a month and a half out, we decided instead of doing 3, we were kind of focusing on, we were doing 2 heroic rag clears, and it was just we were just looking at how many mains and stuff we had as a total. You have about 35 mains on a raiding roster, and you don't want to just be doing one raid in the normals. That's why, and you always hear people oh my god, this guild's doing really bad on normal modes. People need to understand first and foremost, if you're playing for your guild and it's ranking, you need to just put the normal modes in the back of your mind. No one gives a shit. You know what I mean? That's no one cares who gets the normal first kill of anything at all. None. Alright? So, you need to just put your normal mode kills on the back burner and look at, what can I do to maximize our heroic progression, okay? And doing so, this tier, we had 6 groups, and like I said, a month out from Dragon Soul, we were we had initially, think we started talking about doing 4 groups, and then we started looking at the roster, and we were like, no, we can make 5 groups happen. And then I think it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to Dragon Soul, we were just like, you know what, let's push let's push our luck. Let's go hard in the paint, 6 groups, make it happen. And then we had people leveling to new 85s. We had activity on our forums that had like, fresh 85, quickest way to 378 eye level, and it just, people had checklists that you needed to follow and things like that had like rep rewards, BOEs, anything like that. I mean, it was just, we had a system in place where we got as many characters as we could to a goal of eye level 378, and once we got that, that was the eye level that we wanted going into the normal modes. And I mean, it wasn't easy, and the biggest problem was just keeping organization between the 6 groups. And if you can see in that spreadsheet that I linked, I'll go ahead and throw it in there again. You can see at the bottom, it doesn't show the whole thing, but it's got like, we had everything split up, between not just tier tokens. I mean, because you see the Vank, Conk, and Prot main columns, it's, you had about 1 Prot user per group, so any Prot would get funneled into that one person. Conk and Vank users were anywhere between 2 and 3 per group. And then on top of that, you had it broken down to 2-handers, you had it broken down to Agi users, Strength users, Int users, Spirit users. I mean, so it was just like a huge Rubik's Cube that we had to deal with, like, okay, you can't just split it up by Conk token, because you're going to have 2 people that need Int gear, or 2 people that need, caster Int gear, instead of switching a strength conk user with an int conk user and making it as optimized as possible. So I mean, it was honestly the best way to describe it would just be like a gigantic Rubik's Cube, because that's what it was. I mean, it was honestly a nightmare to organize. It took a lot of hours and a lot of people in the guild helping out, and a lot of maintenance. Just going through and making sure eye levels were up to date. Making sure, and I mean, you get all the new alts. You don't want them to have like herbing and, mining. I mean, the guild bank would fund people, up to, a certain amount of gold. Just get stuff like alchemy and inscription. I mean, that way you don't have to grind Therazine and shoulder. I mean, it was just complete min-max on every character that we possibly could. We got a couple of casuals to help fill out the roster, like retired raiders, rather, I guess would be a better way to put it. But this was 100%. In-house, like, and you can see the extras on the right here. These are people, because I mean, we probably could have done 7 groups, but you have people that had to go. You had people whose computer was messing up at the time. I mean, you just want to have a little bit of redundancy. So the whole point I'm getting at here is for you guys to be able to look at this spreadsheet that we had on our front page during that whole LFR drama, and just see the organization that you. I mean, I'm not saying you guys need to be doing 6 groups. I'm just telling you as a raid leader, if you're wanting to maximize your guild's performance on progression, you're going to need to be running multiple normal mode groups. And if that needs to be only 2 groups, if that's what you're able to do, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not saying you have to do 6. I'm just telling you that you need to be doing multiple normal mode runs, and you need to have a high priority on alts if you expect your guild to be legitimate in today's raiding scene, and that's kind of honestly, I mean, that's what it comes down to, is who's got the better depth. And it doesn't just, you can't just be like, oh, that's his alt, it's okay for him to be doing worse on. I mean, obviously there's going to be some sort of a gap between a player's efficiency on their main and their alt. But, the smaller that gap is between the two, the better off you're going to be, okay? So, yeah, that is that. And, I mean, spreadsheets go a lot more than this, It doesn't just stick to organizing multiple raid groups. Like, I can actually show you guys, we've got spreadsheets for you name it, man. Let me just pull some random ones up while we're looking at this. If you guys have questions about that or how to organize them or anything of that nature, feel free to ask, and we'll go ahead and start addressing some questions as they pop up, instead of doing like a 20-minute Q&A at the end. Let's see. We actually had, one sec. Blah, 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 blah. I have a spreadsheet for you guys that I wanted you to check out. I think it's actually on the Blood Legion public forum. So let me look here. and it goes all the way to. Yeah, okay, here it is. Here is the one of the images I was going for. It doesn't necessarily just need to be raiding groups, okay? You know, this is a copy of our staff game plan. This is how many staffs we were, or staves, whatever you want to, you know, some people say staffs, staves, whatever. A lot of people were curious, like, you know, how did you guys get so many legendaries? Did you recruit them? I think we only recruited a couple. We built the vast majority. I think we had like 15 or something. I'm not sure exactly when the screenshot was taken. When this was taken, we had 14. But you can see here, I mean, this shows, you know, who was slotted for which group on which week, and you know, we had up to five groups going during Firelands at any given point, and you know, it shows who's on cinders, the projected finish date, the projected, you know, for each category: embers, cinders, siphons, and we had to rotate that. This was an ongoing thing. You know, I'm just showing you this because this is you're switching back and forth. I'm gonna put this full screen for you guys. Switching back and forth between, you know, the raid groups, and then you've got like anything to, you know, this goes all the way to, you know, legendary staff completion. So, you know, I'm not gonna link the spreadsheet actual URL. I mean, you guys are getting screen captures. You know, I mean, it's just it is what it is. So that is another example of how spreadsheets can help you in your organization, because you can't just be going into stuff and being like, oh, hey, who is getting embers in this raid, who is getting siphons in this raid, who is getting cinders in that raid, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're doing your alt raid, and then you're like, oh, well, who wants to do this? I mean, it's just not as efficient, man. You need a game plan. You need to be organized. It's no different than, you know, doing a normal job. I mean, it doesn't take that long. You just need someone to maintain it. Shinafe maintained our legendary staff spreadsheet, and the raid group one was pretty much me and Zonker did the majority of work on that. I mean, and we had, let me see if I can just get a link to hop through these. It went everywhere from the 6 groups. One sec. Okay. Here is the actual spreadsheet right here. You can see here, like at the bottom, it has, like I said, you can see everything from leather caster to mail soak to spirit soak to cloth soak, plate soak, agi soak, two-hander soak, and then tank gear soak. I mean, so you've got all these categories that you need to be looking at. So if you guys are looking at doing this kind of stuff for your guild, those are the categories that you need to make sure that you're, you know, splitting up. And you also, you know, keep track of, you know, tank mains, caster mains, melee, all that shit, right? And then, you know, say that you also have to have contingency plans. You can't just be going in there and putting in, we'll get over how the loot is distributed later, but right now I'm going over the spreadsheet stuff. You guys got to also understand, like, okay, we were prepared for, you know, if we went into progression and this didn't work, or I'm sorry, if we went into the first week of normal modes and this didn't work, it was like, you know, oh shit, what do we do now? You know what I mean? We've got all these 6 groups with all these things. What if we can't do 6, you know? The way that you do it is you do, you know, anywhere between 3 and 4, or, you know, you say you do like 3 groups, you do like the first 3 bosses. You just base it on how easy the bosses are going. So if you're pulling at the beginning and you're knocking your way through the first 3 bosses, so say Morchok, Yorsaj, and Zanaz, those go fairly easy. You know, it's like, okay, none of the groups should really have a problem with that, and that's why it's important to keep like an average eye level for your groups. You know, just looking at this here, the average eye level for the DPS on Group 1, 384, average eye level for the second group, 385. I mean, you just want to keep things as close as possible, and you know, that gives you a good idea of what your group is going to be capable of doing, like DPS wise and things of that nature, healing, etc. So the way that you do it, like I said, you go through the first 3 or 4 bosses. You basically go until you hit a boss that's somewhat hard. Okay, once you hit that boss, you do you know, you're like, okay, well, let's hop on group 2 and get it up to this point. You basically stagger it. You don't just get on one group and try to clear through all the bosses. You get on one group, you do 2 or 3 bosses. You get on the next group, you do 2 or 3 bosses. You just try to keep them all at the same pace, and that way if you ever hit a hard point, let's say we got to Ultraxian. Because going into the first week of normals, we didn't know how hard Ultraxian was going to be. We didn't know if it was going to be a DPS check that we couldn't, beat with 6 separate groups, you know what I mean? Like if we had a group of full mains, obviously, but when you get to the point where you're diluting your raids with alts of alts of alts, and you've got like 6 string alts in there just to, be a body almost, we didn't know if we were going to be able to make the Ultraxian DPS check. So then it's like, let's say we would not have been able to get to Ultraxian. Let's say we would have needed to trim down the groups from 6 to 4, I mean, that's why it's always contingency, or, we'll start with 5. If we had to trim down to 5, we had a group set up for 5, and it's the same thing. And, say that if 5 wouldn't have got the job done, like you would have had to trim it down to 4, and so on. You have to do a group setup for every single one. You don't want to just be like, oh, we've got this baller-ass 6 group setup, and, you hit a boss that you can't kill with 6 groups, then what are you going to do? Your whole plan is fucked, So you've got to have contingency set up. So it's another important factor to doing things like this. So you see us, we have everything from 6 groups to 5 groups to 4 groups to 3 groups to 2 groups, and then obviously if it's the 1 group deal, you can check that out. You know what I mean? But it's never really an option to only kill normals. If you can't kill normals on more than 1 group, you've got problems a little more than what you think you obviously have. So getting a little more into this, the biggest thing that you guys need to take from that is looking at the category soaks, making sure you have all that lined up, and between those. Something realistic for most guilds would probably be either 2 or 3. I'll just put it on 3 group. And you see all the extras that we have here. But, those are the 3 group setups. I mean, most guilds, any guild that's like getting somewhat serious about doing progression, you guys should be able to field 3. 2 would be bare minimum. Not to insult anybody or anything, but you should every guild that's going to be serious about doing progression should be be able to do at least 2 groups. All right. So if anybody has questions about the spreadsheets and things like that, or how we did it, or anything, just go ahead and toss those in, and we will address those questions as they arise. Let's see here. I want to go over a couple of other benefits of doing the multiple raids. Some people are just like, well, what else is it going to do aside from just splitting loot in the first week of mains. I actually had a few things that I posted on our forums whenever we were promoting back, when we were promoting alts and things like that. The biggest thing is obvious, or one of the biggest things is what we just went over, and that's showing loot distribution during normal modes and things like that between all of your mains. Other benefits, in no particular order, can go anything from more characters to funnel VP and BOE items. Like, it's not just about getting gear during the raids. It's also, and take this tier for example as well. You have epic gems and things like that. We had, every one of these groups killed our Deathwing the first week of normal. We had literally 6 groups all the way through full clears. Every one of those had all the extra epic gems from all those characters, and that gets things like that. And it doesn't say it's a tier that doesn't have epic gems. That's just something unique to this tier that we just did. Say it's justice points or valor points, whatever you're needing at the time to buy, any of the BOE stuff. You don't need to be spending that stuff on your main. Especially on servers where you might not have a lot of those on the AH. Illidan's not really that big of a problem, but say you're on a small market server, what are you going to do if there's none on the AH and you can't buy them with gold? You're going to need to buy them. And instead of spending your mains VP or JP, whatever, you have your alt, which has it through doing this. You help funnel your main that way. So I mean, that's another benefit to doing multiple raids. 1 second. This guy's asking. how did you figure out tier tokens for progression? We're going to get in that. Does BL use spreadsheet like this every week or just for the race? Yeah, we actually have one going pretty much for every week. It is, I can go ahead and, this is our weekly spreadsheet right now. We're doing 325 men, 8 out of 8 clears. That's the one we're going off of this week. You know, nothing super complex, you know, anything like that, but those, you know, those groups right there, we're clearing. We'll probably add a group every 5% nerf. So, I mean, you know, once the 15% nerf hits here, we'll bump it up to 4 clears and things like that. I mean, at the end of the day, we just enjoy raiding, and that's why we're doing it. So, I mean, it's not like anybody's being slave-driven. I mean, the runs don't even take that long once you get to the point of it being super smooth and things like that. Let's see. What about a new expansion and leveling comes into it? Yeah, I mean, everybody will be leveling as fast as possible. Probably have some sort of spreadsheet set up for groups then, you know, and it depends on how quickly we're able to get geared up and things like that. I don't know how, I mean, alts during the first tier of an X pack are obviously going to be a little bit different than they are during the third tier of an X pack. You know, we'll just have to see how all that plays out. It just depends how hard the content is, to be honest. A lot of people are asking, are we raiding? Yes, we're raiding. It's Tuesday. We are going to be raiding. We have 3 25-man heroic full clears going this week, as we do every week. We'll have 1 or 2 of those going tonight, and then whatever we don't finish tonight, we'll do to finish tomorrow. This guy's asking, so everything went well until spine for your spreadsheets? No, we full cleared every single group on normal modes. It's even spine and madness. You know, everything went according to plan. We didn't have to trim down to 5 groups at any point. Let's see. Do you tell specific people to roll a specific alt, or did you just let people roll whatever they wanted? I was going to get into that. I'll go ahead and address it now. Talking about, like, you know, raid comp diversity. You know, you don't want... I mean, you want people to play what they want to play. You don't want to force someone to be like, you play this character, and then they're playing a character that they hate playing, because that's no fun. But most people don't really care. I mean, at the same time, it's like most people just enjoy playing, and it doesn't really matter most class. I mean, there's very few times where you're going to have somebody that literally hates playing in class to the point to where they're like, you know, I hate being here. Can I please switch alts or something? That's a very rare case. But if it is, you know, we're like, sure, switch, you know, whatever. You kind of want to, in my opinion, I mean, people's opinion differs. You know, you have people that say you want tanks to roll a different class, like a healer. You want a DPS to roll a healer. You want a healer to roll a DPS. I personally think that it's best to have people doing the same roles. Like, say you have a healer, I would want healers to have other class healers because, I mean, let's face it, it doesn't really matter if you're a good player and you're a DPS that can heal good. You don't have as intimate of a, you know, your flow just isn't what it is for a healer. You know, that's what a healer does. They eat, sleep, and breathe that shit. You know, they are all about healing all the time. Whereas a DPS, you know, I mean, it's just changing gears completely. You know, and so, in my opinion, it's better to have a healer switch to another class healer. Say that, okay, this fight sucks shit for a druid, let me get on my priest. Or this fight's absolutely horrible for my priest, let me get on my shaman. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that, in my opinion, is the best way to go. But at the end of the day, as long as you have diversity, it doesn't matter. And as long as the people that you have playing the classes are good on those classes, that's all that counts. All right. What is the real point of running that many DSs if there's going to be no real raid tier coming out before expansion? People ask that all the time. I mean, how do you know that there's not going to be another raid tier? You know what I mean? Like, how do you know that? You don't know that. Is it because Blizzard said so? Blizzard said a lot of things, right? I mean, Black Temple was supposed to be the last instance in Burning Crusade, and then, oh shit, Sunwell, an entire, you know, one of the best instances ever made, and one of the hardest instances ever made. You know, I mean, what are you going to do when that happens? You know, all it's going to take is a major delay in miss, and then boom, you've got a new raid tier. And I mean, even if it's something like Halion, you know what I mean, or you know, a Halion-esque boss, just a one-boss deal. I mean, you can't just sit back and be like, oh well, Madness is dead. See you guys next X-Pack. Peace. You know, I mean, complacency kills, man. I mean, that is the number one thing that you've got to avoid having in your mindset. You know, like, I mean, again, we're not forcing people to raid. At the end of the day, we just enjoy raiding. That's why we're doing it. But on top of that, it's like the underlying goal towards all these is we have multiple characters that are raid ready at any given point. And you don't want to be that guild that was like, oh, well, next tier's not coming out, or, we're just chilling until the X-Pack, and then boom, a new mini instance is released with 4 bosses, or 1 boss, or 7 bosses. And what are you going to do then? You know what I mean? Like, you're absolutely shafted. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, like, people keep asking about, sure, there may not be, and all this may just be, doing it for fun, and we're cool with that. If there isn't a new raid tier, it's not like we're going to be losing sleep over it and being like, man, we just wasted all that time. I mean, people enjoy playing alts. We raid, mandatory 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during farm. That's it. Anything else that you guys watch through the streams, it's completely optional. It's more or less just people doing sales runs. So it's not like this is some type of, program that's designed to keep raiders busy 6-7 nights a week. We raid 3 nights a week, and that's it. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. Let's see. So how do I think Heroics will pan out with how easy LFR is currently and MOP? I mean, that's just speculation, man. I don't want to get tied into the MOP discussion just because, things are going to change 10 times over and whatnot. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes once beta's out. Hopefully they're difficult just because people like a challenge. And by having LFR, I mean, who knows, they may not even have LFR in the first tier of content. No one knows. We'll have to see. They say one thing, but that doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be when it hits live. Trying to catch up on questions here. You and your raiders, do you currently only log in to clear the raids, or do you and everyone play someone actively throughout the week now that we have entered somewhat of a dead zone? It is definitely something that, like I said, we raid Dragon Soul Heroic 25s on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Thursday is the mandated sales runs. You might say, well, why does somebody have to show up for a sales run? Making gold is still a part of having, being prepared for progression. And that's something that, we're trying to keep this on topic with the raid leader discussion. That's something that you need to make sure that your raid or guild is doing as a whole. You don't want those people that are, living paycheck to paycheck. They turn in their dailies to do the repairs, and then they're out of gold. Hey, dog, can I borrow 20 gold? That shit isn't going to cut it. When new tiers come out, people need to be able to re-roll professions. People need to be able to buy BOEs. People need to be able to deal with, you get craftables, you name it, man. I mean, like, you got to be able to put, and this is all speaking about it from a, you want to push hard perspective. This is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Like, can you do it without it? Sure. All I'm doing is telling you ways to maximize, the method and process of getting there. So, you need to be able to have people to dump that gold on whatever they need to be doing, and things like that. Let's see. Does your guild or other top-end guilds of what recruit at the start of the X-Pack? It's kind of hard to recruit at the top of or beginning of an X-Pack. That goes into a different category, really. You don't ever want to pick somebody up at the beginning of an X-Pack because you don't know what to expect. I could pick up somebody that's playing a DK, right? Say we pick up a Death Knight. Until we are comfortable with what that class is able to do and things like that, it's going to be, we could have a person that's just able to stay out and not die. He's got good survivability, so he's never dying, and say his numbers are middle of the pack, and it looks like he's doing okay. But actual, ceiling of the class, he should be at the top of the meters. So it's kind of hard to, judge whenever you're going into the first tier of an X-Pack. So one guy's asking, how do you explain some guild's success when they do one alt run? Like I said, man, this isn't about saying that this is the way that you have to do it. You're asking, you're watching my stream. I'm telling you my opinion, and that is what it is. It's my opinion. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm the only person, or it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It's just what I think about the situation. And, are there other ways to accomplish this? Yes. There's tons of different ways to get, to accomplish any goals. You have autocratic versus democratic. You have, people that, at the end of the day, like I said, it doesn't matter how many raids you're running. It makes zero difference, because when you're in there on mains during your heroics, it's going to come down to the guild that plays the best. That's the end-all, be-all. This is just all behind-the-scenes shit to enhance your chances at doing so. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to people playing well and not making mistakes and picking up on things quickly. That's it, and thinking outside the box. So, we could do all 6 of these runs, and if we would have went in there and played like dog shit, we wouldn't have had anything to show for it. But we didn't. We went in there and we played well, on top of having these runs, which directly contributed to the reason that we were having success. It's all a huge equation. There is no one answer that's going to be, the explanation to everything. So you need to get that through your head and understand that for you to be able to, grasp the whole vibe of what we're trying to, explain here. Do I think my straight military side towards regulating and progressing is the best way to get high ranks? I just went over that, man. You can be nice and get the same results. It's just the way I deal with it. I don't think anybody's wrong or right. As long as they're getting the job done, that's all that matters. Trying to catch up with some of these questions. I want to get to going more on some of this. Had some other topics I wanted to go over. When you guys decided you were going to do what was needed to focus on the top spot, did you gradually introduce it, or was it more of a sink or swim situation? That's a good question. It was somewhat gradually introduced. It wasn't like, okay, guys, let's go hard. Boom, 7 groups. Boom, get all these alts ready. Boom, just do all this. You can't. There's no light switch to flip. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you just go over there and flip the switch and then things just go hardcore. You have to gradually implement it, but you have to, the entire time, and this goes back to things that were talked about during my first raid leader discussion thing that I did. It just comes down to having that direction identified for your guild, okay? And that's one thing that you need to make sure that you have at the top of the pyramid. It's just understood, no gray area, black and white, the goals and expectations of what is being pushed for, and that's one thing that has to be understood by everyone in the guild. So, with that said, once the goals are understood, you gradually build it up to what you think that you want it to be. It's not just, a night and day difference. You got to build your way up. You guys are asking what the asterisks and @ that's just alchemists and people that can drop feasts, just to make sure that we had an alchemist who could drop a cauldron and someone that could drop a feast in each group. Okay. This last question I'm going to take, and then we're going to get on to a little bit more stuff about the thing. This guy's asking how many alts do we require to maintain. This is your main and 2 different alts that's required, because we're doing attendance and DKP for all those runs. But, say like we've got a couple people in the guild that don't really have the time to maintain multiple alts, and that's fine. You're not going to get kicked out of the guild if you're not maintaining 3 characters. Most people do. I think pretty much like 31 out of the 33 active people that we have on our roster maintain at least 3 alts. We have a couple people that don't, but that's fine. They've got their reasons for not doing so. I mean, at the end of the day, 1 or 2 people aren't going to make a difference when it comes to doing things like that. It's take people that have like full-time jobs that just don't have the time outside of progression. As long as that player is the player you need it to be during progression, work around their schedules. You don't ever need to be running it to the point to where it's like, you don't have 3 alts, get out of my guild. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like that. All right. Let's see. A couple other things I wanted to go over though about this is other benefits and whatnot to having and maintaining multiple alts. We went over better loot spread. That's why I showed you guys the spreadsheets and explained a little bit about the importance and, development of spreadsheets and things like that. Then I just went over, having more characters to funnel gold, VP, BOE, craftables, things like that. Not to mention as well, like I said, gold and whatnot. But the number one thing is, hands down, is just it promotes comp flexibility during progression. By maintaining these alts and keeping them active on a weekly basis, not only are you keeping, yourself spun up on it, you're keeping those characters in the gear level that they need to be and things like that, and then you're able to bring them in on progression. So, that's ultimately the number one goal for alts would be, raid flexibility during progression. Let's see. A couple things I wanted to touch on as well. A lot of people ask about loot and things like that, and it kind of ties into the spreadsheets and whatnot. And, it pretty much comes down to, as a guild, are you going to be using DKP or are you going to be using Loot Council? And, that relates to a raid leader because, things like that directly do affect the raid in multiple ways. And, you could be in one of the guilds that, cares a lot more about loot than they should. I know a lot of people that are just getting into raiding, or some of my previous guilds, it was that way. You don't want to promote loot to the point to where it's a reason people are playing the game. You want to make sure that you have your raid environment to the point where loot is just a means to accomplish the goals, and that's what people need to look at it like. People don't need to have purple fever. Like I played in a guild called Forlorn Legacy before I came to Blood Legion, and we had a rogue named Desecrate, and the guy, you talk about purple fever. He would foam at the mouth anytime a piece of gear drop that he wanted. You know what I mean? That's the type of attitude that you want to stray away from, because it just ends up, it's just, you want to have a team atmosphere, and during progression, you're not giving people gear because you don't want to hear them bitching, or you're not giving people gear because of how hard, how long they've been in the guild. You need to be handing gear out during progression based on who it best suits. You know what I mean? Like, that may be the new Red Paladin that's been in the guild for less than 2 months. And he may be new to the guild, and you've got this guy in the guild that's been in the guild for 3 years. You need to basically be like, okay, well, the Red Paladin needs the gear. Just perfect example would be this tier going into Spine. You know what I mean? You're looking at classes that you need to get gear for tendon damage. So you can't, you couldn't justify giving, like, let's take for example, say a hunter. Hunters were horrible on tendon damage, right? So you've got a hunter that's been in the guild for 2 years, and you've got a Red Paladin that's been in the guild for 2 months. Okay, well, that's when it just comes down to prioritizing the guild above people's feelings, and this is the exact situation that I'm talking about. You don't. That's why if you're running Loot Council, you need to be able to address those issues and make the guild understand how and why it's happening. You don't want to have people that are just like, oh my God, this new Red Paladin just got gear, you know what I mean? And then you have people that are disgruntled, and like I said, the mid-range or whatever guilds and things like that are people that are a lot newer to the game. Gear is a lot more important to them for whatever reason. Usually, whenever you get around to talking about people that are, they've been around the game for years, loot starts to lose that shiny factor or whatnot. You're around and you want to see the guild succeed. That's your number one goal. And if that means giving loot to someone that has 1/10 of the tenure of someone, because that's what's going to get the job done, that's what you need to do. And the whole point of this is to compare the loot systems used. You can have DKP, you can have Loot Council, you can have there's multiple different variations of DKP. You can also have you could have a system that rolls on loot, but something that just, I don't want to touch too much on the loot thing, but a lot of people ask about it, so that's why we're talking about it. And by the way, the thing about Desecrate, I was just trolling him. I saw him typing in chat a bit, so you guys relax. I see people foaming. That was nothing more than a friendly troll. So yeah, I'm not being serious about that. But there are people that are like that, and that was the point I was trying to get across. But what I'm saying is, there are pros and cons to using DKP versus loot council for your guilds. You need to basically understand your guild and, have them understand the goals and what gear is really used for. Because gear outside of progression, that's cool. Use it for reward, use it for showing up, whatever you need to do, however you need to run your guild. But gear during progression, it needs to be going to the classes that is best suited for progression. You know what I mean? Because you only get one shot at progression. It's only a one-time deal. You're not going to be able to be like, oh, next week let's just do it differently. That's not how it works. Progression. That's what makes this game unique from a lot of other games. It's not like, okay, we can just keep getting better and better and better. It doesn't work like that. This game is, you've got to get better and you've got to make it happen during that 1 month time frame. In 2 week to 1 month time frame of when progression is active. And if you can't do it then, you're waiting 6 months to a year to do it again. You know what I mean? So it's that's something you got to make sure that your guild is aware of, and that's something you need to make sure that your guild is set up and structured to optimize. And whether that's using DKP, loot council, a combination, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you are, putting your guild in the best possible position to, do as good as it can during progression. Okay. With that said, those are the two topics I wanted to go over. Just to recap, we went over spreadsheets, the importance of spreadsheets, things that you want to look for when you're making a spreadsheet, the different types of spreadsheets that you can have rolling, and also, the importance of alts in a progression environment, in a progression rating guild. Also, pros and cons of loot systems and things like that. So those are the topics that we've covered. We've got about 10 minutes. I want to go ahead and answer any questions that you guys have over anything that we've covered, and then we'll wrap it up after that. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in chat, and then we'll see what we can get going. I saw a couple up here that I'm going to get to. This one guy's asking about what about mounts and things that don't have to do with progression. That's just a guild-based thing, man. You just need to find out whatever works best for your guild. You can have them roll on it. You can have them spend DKP on it, whatever. How much emphasis would you put on PTR testing? That is a good question. Sinner asks, is probably asked for other people to understand how important PTR testing is. PTR testing is progression. If you're not doing PTR testing and putting a super high focus on it, you're not obviously going to be in there testing it on alts. The way PTR works is the boss gets reset every day or so. You need to be in there on mains and getting the time in on PTR, because that is, you can't just go into progression once it hits live and expect to compete with people that have already had days of practice on PTR. It's just not going to happen. Let's see. What would you do about someone who plays suboptimal? You'd have to clarify the question a bit, and yeah, I would have to answer it once I see exactly what you mean. Let's see. Do you think disc is a strong point in Drysdale? Yeah, that's an affinity question. How do you, as a raid leader, prepare for new raids? Go to my YouTube and watch the segment that we had last week going. And I had dealt a lot with raid preparation. I talked about it for a long time. It's not something we could just go over quickly. Just best way to put it would just be as thorough and in-depth as possible. How do you efficiently have 2 or more people maintain just one spreadsheet? Just emailed? No, man, Google Docs. It's a community deal, and they can all open it on Google Docs and edit it as needed. And everybody can see it as it's being edited. Do I believe tanks could be geared first in guilds, or do you think it should be given to whoever's best suited for it? Having tank gear is very, very important, because, you only have 2 tanks in a raid most of the time, anywhere between 1 to 2, and that is a single point of failure that if that if that person dies, I mean, a lot of it you'll be able to. Easiest way I can put it to you, I mean, it is very important for tanks to get gear, very, very important. But you need to be able to figure out through PTR and through testing which, if a tank is going to need a lot of gear. Because if a tank doesn't need a lot of gear and they're going to be able to make it happen without it, you do need to give it to somebody else. But it is very, very important for a tank to get gear just because of how critical of a point that they play as far as the role of the raid. And I'm not saying they're more important. I'm just saying, like I said, there's only 1 or 2 tanks in a raid, and if one of them dies, you're pretty much up shit creek. This guy's asking, I'm just addressing it because it's a Marine Corps question. Yeah, those are Marine Corps class graduating pictures. Top one is my Sergeant's Course graduating class in 2006. The one below that is Gulf Battery 211, and before we deployed to go to Iraq, and then the bottom one is a machine gun course graduation pic. Let's see. This guy here is asking the same question about PTR testing. Do you think it would be more of a competition if they didn't let you trial the raids beforehand? I mean, sure. If they didn't let anybody PTR test, it's still equal ground. I mean, pretty much any hardcore. The way that it works, I mean, you've only got a handful of guilds that are, say the top 25 world guilds. Those are the only ones that are going to be going insanely hard, pushing, nonstop and things like that. Those guilds are already going to be testing on PTR, so it is an even footing. But whenever you're dealing with other guilds like, the mid-range, the top 1000s, things like that, it makes a little bit of a difference there. But all the top guilds are pretty much going to be doing the same stuff anyway, so it's an even playing field regardless almost. There's very few top guilds, I think, that would ignore PTR testing. I would hope so, at least, and not to my knowledge. So right here it says he once saw a Kungan interview, and he said one way to keep someone motivated, he always had recruitment going so people don't get complacent about spots. That's correct. You always want to make sure people understand, there's raid spot. You can't just be lazy. But then the second part of the question, how do you motivate players even in farm times? It just comes down to self. I mean, that's why you have to do a good job doing your recruitment process. And that's why the recruiters that we have in the guild are able to, most of the time, not all the time. I mean, there are obviously some exceptions, but you want to recruit people that have that self-discipline, that have that self-motivation. Like people that you understand are not just going to be like, oh, this is boring, I quit. You've got to have people that are able to keep finding ways to, whether it's, going for parses, whether it's, whatever you need to do to motivate yourself, having faster raid kill times, not individual records, but just going for, raid kill times, whether it's, multiple all-run, you find stuff to keep people motivated and make sure that the, atmosphere promotes, being active. You don't ever want people to just hate being around, because if you have people that hate being there, it just brings down the whole group. And like Zara said, you have to enjoy the people that you're raiding with. That is a very, very important part. And I'm not saying you have to, like, stroke each other's penis and, kiss each other on the cheek and things like that. I mean, anybody that's watched our stream, you've seen us get mad at each other. It happens, you know what I mean? But, more times than not, and when it comes down to it, we understand that we're all on the same team and things like that. Different guilds have different ways of getting that across to each other. But, that's a guild-by-guild situation. The common question a lot of people always ask, do you think 10-man progression is harder than 25-man in terms of just mechanics? Completely dependent on the fight, man. Like I said in multiple of the broadcasts that we've had in the past, each fight this tier was either equal, or you just go through them. Warchok, pretty easy either way. Sanaz, I mean, difficult both sides. I mean, the biggest deal is Hagar was a lot harder on 10-man. Gunship was harder on 10-man. Spine was a lot harder on 25. Ultraxium was a night and day difference harder on 25. And then you have Madness, which was pretty difficult either way. I mean, it just depends on the fight. There's no clear-cut 25 is harder than 10s, 10s is harder than 25s. It's a fight-by-fight, basis, and it's comparing apples and oranges. All right. How did I deal with leaving Forlorn Legacy? Were you an officer and a raid leader? Yes, I was. I just came to the point where it was very clear that the guild's goals were not matching with the goals that I had. You know what I mean? I wanted a lot more from the game. You know, like I was talking, and this kind of ties into the whole raid leading thing. You don't want to have a guild where you're having people that just don't want to be there, and that was kind of the case. And you don't ever want to just be wasting your time. All right. Let's see, a couple more questions, get these wrapped up here. So yeah, I mean, to wrap up the FL question, I just decided that I wanted to do more with the game. I talked to Ararat from Blood Legion, and it kind of just went from there, and I ended up joining. Question about progression, when there's a non-linear progression difficulty, at what point do you say, we're clearing this on normal, there are probably easier bosses later on? You don't ever want to make that assumption. That just comes down to if you're that's where you got to know your guild and be able to just know the game. You know what I mean? You need to be able to tell if a boss is killable or if it's not killable. And one thing that's super taboo, you don't ever want to say that's impossible, because anybody that's been around hardcore raiding can tell you right now that saying something is impossible is the quickest way to look like an idiot, because someone will find a way to make it happen. You know what I mean? So, depending on the level of guild you're playing in, that's something that you may or may not have to face. Take Dragon Soul, for example. Probably wouldn't want to put that much effort on your side. If your guild wasn't that strong, you get to Hagara on 25-man because it was a lot easier. I mean, those are decisions that you're just going to have to make based on knowing your guild. You know, that's something I can't answer. That's a good question, though. Were there people in the guild who didn't agree with the way you lead raids at first, since it was so much different than the previous? Yes, there was quite a few people that it was a very conflicting atmosphere with. Since then, those people have either moved on, went to other guilds, and been their problem. You know, not to, root so any names or anything, but, some people have, did their thing and, went about their own ways. See, says I was in Duality. What realm were they on? That's a different Duality. It was on Storm Reaver. Do I miss gear check bosses like Muru? I think Spine was about as gear check of a boss as you're going to find, to be honest. So, I mean, they're always good, and it's kind of hard to make bosses hard through mechanics, especially when dealing with super veteran raiders and things like that. So, the next easiest way to do it is just buff HP and buff damage output and things like that. So it's kind of difficult to answer, I guess, because there's always going to be gear checks. Yeah, if Ultraxion would not have gotten nerfed, it would not have died the first week. You would have had to have farmed gear for it. And, you get into dealing with, is it good to have gating in the game? Is it good to have limited attempts in the game? And I want to explain something to some people about that real quick. If you're going to have gating, it's not going to change anything. You're still going to be doing the exact same things that guilds are going to be doing, which is running multiple groups to get maximum gear until that next gate is opened, right? And then outside of that, if you want to look at limited attempts, all you're going to do then is you're going to have hardcore guilds running multiple raids on alts to learn abilities, get face time on the boss, get repetition in, and then they're going to go in there on mains. So it doesn't matter what way you spin it, you're going to have the guilds that are going to go super hardcore. They're just going to have multiple groups, and they're going to be in there doing it on that. So there is no answer to fix it, to keep people from, doing this type of thing, because that's just how it's going to be, and you can't change it. Let's see. How many guild groups would you recommend for a 10-man guild to maximize loot coming into a new tier? I mean, it's kind of hard to answer that, because 10-man is a little different than 25-man. The thing about 25-man is you get so many more gear drops, so it's a lot easier to deal with. 10-man, you're only getting like 2 drops off a boss. I would say probably 3 groups if you could swing it. I would have about 3 groups going, but it's going to be harder to get your guild geared because you have less of a variety dropping, and things like that. So. Multiple raids, though, just get as many as you can get going. At least 3, I would suggest. Okay, that was a good question. So we're gonna wrap it up with that. Again, quick recap. Went over spreadsheets, how to organize raids, importance of alts on progression, and then some pros and cons of different loot systems. Okay, and You know, at the end of the day, people just need to understand one thing. All this shit that we're talking about, every bit of this planning, preparation, and all that, at the end of the day, you have to understand that the number one contributing factor to the success of your guild is player skill. That's it. There is no way to dress that up and erase it or hide it or anything like that. You have to be able to have a player base that has the skill set and the just ability to pick up things quickly, execute them quickly and things like that. That is the number one factor in being, getting a higher ranking. All this other stuff, it helps, but, I feel the need to stress that, pretty highly. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed the show. Again, every Tuesday we kind of talk about things from a raid leader perspective. Next week we'll have some different topics going on. Tomorrow is tank Q&A, so if you guys have a tank, a DK warrior, paladin, druid, doesn't matter what class, if you got some, questions about itemization, fight mechanics, anything like that, anything tank related, you guys can hop on here tomorrow and we'll be going over things about tank Q&A. It's a lot less formal, just me answering questions, talking, things like that. Every one of the shows, the schedule's over there on the side and on the bottom of my stream. But, yeah, make sure you bring over any questions that you have for those. I don't have all this, I'm not a super mathlete, so if you're going to come over here with like some coefficient questions and things like that, I'm not the guy for that. I'm the guy that, I play all the classes on all the fights and, did all the fights last year as well on all the classes, or actually every tier of the six pack. All right, so, I'll be able to answer it from that POV, but yeah, I'm not your math guy if that's the kind of questions you have. This Friday, one thing I want you guys to do for me, I'm going to give you guys a link, and I want you guys to go to this link and vote. All right, for the special guest this Friday, it's going to be a warrior from Blood Legion, and actually, one sec, I'm actually going to add Quicks into the mix, real quick. And then you guys can revote. Okay, so make sure you guys are voting on this. This is going to be a poll for this Friday's results. I'm pretty sure about changing that. Yeah. So everybody that can vote on that. Who you guys want to see on the special guest weekend or Friday, and we'll go from there. Thursday, tank one-on-one. I think I've got somebody lined up for that. I'm just waiting on them to get back to me, and you guys will be able to see that. But as far as tonight goes, we have multiple 25-man 8 out of 8 Dragon Souls coming up in less than 1 hour, so you guys make sure to hang around for that. I'm going to just chill for a bit, run a few commercials since I haven't ran any the whole time. And if you guys are new here, make sure to follow the stream. If you guys have been on the stream before, you notice a lot of new links on the bottom. Make sure you guys are checking those out. Reddit tank contest, DK tank thread, and things of that nature. Okay, and then the Armory audit spreadsheet as well. So make sure you guys follow the channel, follow me on Twitter, add me on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. All right, and if anybody's super awesome and wants to chip in, just hit that button right below, and help me work on my computer to get the 1080p quality stream going with a beast mode computer lined up with that. So yeah, make sure you guys hang around. Less than an hour, get some raids starting, and you guys will enjoy that. All right, so I'll run a few commercials. Hope you guys enjoy the show.